Good evening. Come this December, it'll be 15 years since Indian Airlines flight IC-814 was hijacked. The hostage drama that lasted then for 7 days is even today considered a blot on India's record. And now, 15 years later, come this winter session of Parliament, the government is going to table a new anti-hijacking bill. We're told a more stringent bill. What's in that bill, and will this change anything? That's going to be our top focus on the news tonight. Welcome to the show. I'm Zaka Jacob. As always, the headlines first. The Devendra Fadnavis government in Maharashtra gets off on the wrong foot. It wins a confidence motion by voice vote amid cries of foul play both by the Shiv Sena as well as by the Congress. There's more trouble for the BJP in Chhattisgarh, where the death toll from the botched-up sterilization campaign has now gone up to 13, even as the Congress holds a bandh across the state. Good news on the economic front. Inflation hits a low of 5.5% on the back of falling global crude prices. This on a day when the markets closed at a historic high, the Sensex finishing above 28,000. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs the India-ASEAN summit in Myanmar, on the sidelines of which he meets with global leaders, including the champion of democracy, Aung San Suu Kyi. And it's a big step forward in the battle against climate change. The world's two biggest polluters, China and America, agree to mandatory cuts in carbon emissions. And our top story on the news tonight. The BJP government in Maharashtra today won the confidence motion in the assembly by a voice vote. And this was amid much drama as well as controversy. Both the Congress and the Shiv Sena, and they are unlikely partners in this, both voted against the government and both protested against the Speaker's decision not to hold a division of votes. By the evening, there was even more drama as the Speaker suspended 5 Congress MLAs for a period of 2 years for reportedly heckling the governor.
It was a day of high drama in and outside the Maharashtra Assembly on Wednesday. The 13-day-old minority BJP government successfully passed the floor test. The motion was moved and passed by a voice vote. The decision did not go down well with Shiv Sena or Congress members. Both parties claimed that BJP did not have the numbers to prove its majority through a division vote. They lodged a strong protest demanding fresh trust vote.
महाराष्ट्र की जनतांत्रिक इतिहास का एक सबसे काला दिन है और कांग्रेस पार्टी का एक शिष्टमंडल, एक प्रतिनिधि मंडल राज्यपाल महोदय से मिलेगा और हमारी पूरी मांग है कि विश्वास दर्शक प्रस्ताव फिर से रखा जाए।
जो डिमांड कर सब अपोजिशन पार्टी ने की थी कि सभी ने कि वहां पर आज वोटिंग होना चाहिए, ये डिमांड अध्यक्ष ने सुनी नहीं है।
उन्होंने जो पोल की मांग हम लोगों ने सब विरोधी पक्ष के सदस्यों ने की थी, उसे भी ठुकरा कर वहां पर गड़बड़ी में यहां पर कामकाज सदन का काम आगे बढ़ाने का काम किया। ये भी महाराष्ट्र के जनता के साथ विश्वासघात है।
The decision to avoid a division vote is being seen as an attempt to not bring on record the possibility of Sharad Pawar's NCP having voted for the BJP or abstaining. However, the party said they would have abstained to help the Fadnavis government win the trust vote. NCP has left BJP guessing on its next move in case a fresh floor test is announced.
NCP का रोल इसमें हमने स्पष्ट हमारी भूमिका रखी है कि महाराष्ट्र में स्थिर सरकार आना चाहिए।
As Governor C. Vidyasagar Rao made his way into the assembly in the evening to make an address, Congress and Sena MLAs blocked his way outside the assembly. 5 Congress legislators have been suspended for 2 years. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And even as they've started their MLA innings, they've already been suspended for 2/5 of their term. We'll see how that plays out with the Congress legislature party in Maharashtra. Meanwhile, the day, though, did get off to a rather good start, with BJP leader Haribhau Bagde being unanimously elected to the Speaker's post in the Maharashtra Assembly. You'll remember that both the Shiv Sena and the Congress had fielded their own separate candidates. The election became a one-way affair after both those parties withdrew their candidates. This decision was taken after Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis spoke personally to the leaders of both these parties, but that was only to deceive, because the day panned out amidst much drama and confusion. Some national news now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today invited the 10-nation ASEAN bloc to invest in India. In his opening statement at the 12th Asean India Summit, Prime Minister Modi said the intensity with which his government has increased the country's engagement, particularly in the East, is, according to him, a reflection of the priority it attaches to the region. Modi also met with Myanmar's opposition leader and Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi.
The Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy with one of the biggest pro-democracy icon of our times. The interaction was just one of the many highlights on a day when Narendra Modi took part in the 25th ASEAN Summit at Naypyidaw. In his address, the Prime Minister made a strong Make in India pitch, inviting the 10-nation bloc to be part of India's new economic journey.
मुझे अत्यंत प्रसन्नता हो रही है कि आज मुझे आसियान इंडिया समिट में भाग लेने का अवसर मिला है। विशेष सौभाग्य की बात यह इसलिए है कि अवसर मुझे म्यांमार में मिला है।
Prime Minister mentioned that India is for a comprehensive, RCEP means comprehensive, so regional comprehensive economic partnership, and he underlined the word comprehensive because he felt it cannot be only restricted to trade in goods but also should cover services, etc.
After an interaction at the round table, Modi also met ASEAN leaders in separate bilateral meetings where his flagship Make in India campaign found resonance. He even tweeted an apparent endorsement from the Thai Prime Minister for his Make in India campaign. The campaign also figured during his interaction with his Malaysian counterpart Najib Razak. In other meetings, the Prime Minister told his Singaporean counterpart Lee Hsien Loong that there's a lot of goodwill for his country in ASEAN. India-ASEAN trade is around $76 billion, just 3% of the total ASEAN trade. It's targeting $100 billion for bilateral trade by 2015. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, back home, the death toll in the Bilaspur sterilization camp tragedy has now gone up to 13. The High Court has sought a detailed report from the government in 10 days as protests flared up in the state over this botched-up sterilization drive.
Pressure is mounting on the Chhattisgarh government after a botched-up sterilization surgery killed at least 13 women. Massive protests rocked capital city Raipur as hundreds of Congress workers took to the streets demanding immediate resignation of Chief Minister Raman Singh and Health Minister Amar Agarwal. The party observed Bandh in the state on Wednesday.
थोड़ी भी अगर शर्म हो राज्य शासन को तो अमर अग्रवाल जो हेल्थ मिनिस्टर है उनको तुरंत इस्तीफा देना चाहिए अपनी जवाबदारी को समझते हुए और गैर जिम्मेदाराना बयानों के लिए और हेल्थ मिनिस्टर को बचाने के लिए रमन सिंह को इस्तीफा देना चाहिए।
The Chhattisgarh High Court has taken suo motu cognizance of the tragedy. It has sought a detailed report from the state government within 10 days. As per initial reports, rusty equipment was used by the doctor who conducted the surgery on 83 women. Shockingly, the same doctor was awarded by the state government earlier this year for carrying out 1 lakh such surgeries in his career. It is now left red-faced.
डॉक्टर की लापरवाही है और उस के आधार पे ही हमने कड़ी कार्रवाई की है। डॉक्टर के खिलाफ क्रिमिनल केस किया है। सीएमओ, बीएमओ, स्टेट हेड इन तीनों को निलंबित किया है और ये सारे प्रकरण की जांच के लिए हमने कमेटी बनाई हुई है।
So far, 4 officials have been suspended for the tragedy. A team of doctors from Delhi's AIIMS was rushed to Bilaspur on Wednesday to attend to the victims. Around 50 women are being treated. Some of them are still in a critical condition. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the government, the central government that is all set to amend the anti-hijacking bill, which was brought in by the previous UPA government. The NDA reportedly wants to make it even more stringent. The government is hoping to get it passed in the upcoming winter session of Parliament. The new Anti-Hijacking Amendment Bill 2014 is shortly expected to be considered by the Union Cabinet. It will replace what is a 3-decade-old Anti-Hijacking Act of 1982.
The 9/11 terror strike, the Kandahar hijacking, both wake-up calls for tougher laws to protect our skies. But even years after these terrible incidents, the country still lacks a strong anti-hijacking bill. Former Civil Aviation Minister Praful Patel introduced the bill in 2010 in the Rajya Sabha. A standing committee examined and submitted its report the same year. But the bill is still pending. The present government is promising to change that with a new bill that is in tune with the current global laws and regulations.
The new bill has already been drafted, it's being vetted by law, and we'll be taking it to the cabinet. As soon as the cabinet clears it, we'll present it or introduce it in the House and withdraw the existing bill.
At present, the maximum sentence for hijackers is life imprisonment. Under the new provisions, the offence will carry the death penalty. They also broaden the definition of hijacking. Trial of offenders will be fast-tracked, with state governments being allowed to designate a sessions court to hold a trial on daily basis.
Beijing Convention has laid down where a group of countries under the ICAO umbrella has met and have made certain standards and recommendations. Our existing rules may be modified or amended.
The new law will allow security forces to shoot down hostile planes. Aircrafts can be immobilized or prevented from taking off if there is a suspicion that they will be used as missiles. There are provisions for dealing sternly with phone and hoax threats. As the new anti-hijacking bill is on the anvil for awarding death penalty to the hijackers, there are many who say that if death penalty is ensured for all hijacking offences, then the scope and opportunity for negotiation and settlement to save the lives of the passengers would be closed. While there are others who question if death penalty would really serve as a deterrent to hijackers on suicide missions. Reporting from Delhi, Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
All right, so like I said at the top of the show, next month it's going to be 15 years since the Kandahar hijacking. Has this bill come 15 years too late? Kapil Kark is a retired Air Vice Marshal. He's now joining us live on the news tonight. As I understand, this bill was cleared by the Cabinet Committee on Security in 2005. It was presented by the previous UPA government in 2010. Then it went to a parliamentary standing committee. And now the NDA government is hoping to bring this in the upcoming winter session of Parliament. Is there any sense as to why this bill has taken so long in coming?
No, absolutely. There is no excuse. But as the Persian saying indicates, der ayest, durst ayest. Even if it's late, it's still the right way to go. But I think Zaka, you raised some very crucial points, because in the interregnum between 2000 and 2014, 2 months ago, we've had a video of Ayman al-Zawahiri talking about an Al-Qaeda outfit which will now target India, Bangladesh and Myanmar. We've also had earlier warnings by the Bureau of Civil Aviation about possible hijackings and possible attacks on airports, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Cochin. Yeah. So what we are looking at actually is a terror framework which stays with society. Conventional wars are gone, and we're looking at society, civil society, as the new warriors against terrorism. Second point is that 2010, of course, it's been lying on the table of Rajya Sabha since then, but there are so many other bills as well. And I think where I go along with you, there was some urgency about this. But what it provides, this delay, provides an opportunity to make the anti-hijacking laws more contemporary and in line with the international anti-hijacking practices. In
Marshal, I'm just curious about the fact that after 9/11, hasn't it become that much more difficult for terrorists to use either airports or airlines to carry out their nefarious plans? I mean, airports, almost all major airports around the world, not just the ones in India, but almost all major airports around the world are now literally fortresses. The incentive to break through that and carry out a nefarious design, hasn't that by and large evaporated after 9/11?
I'm reminded of Second World War bomber ace. He was called Bomber Harris, Air Marshal Harris. He said the bomber will always go through. I think I can take this analogy to the worst case scenario, even if it's 1 in million, 1 in 20,000 instances, a terrorist may go through, despite the fortress-like atmosphere which you, Zaka, described as the current situation, with which I agree. The point is, A, when that happens, do we have a deterrent mechanism? We also had a Beijing protocol which is in conformity with the Indian International Civil Aviation Organization, again in 2010. Between 2010 and 2014, the situation, if anything, could show signs of worsening, as recent instances have indicated. So I think what it means, really speaking, is to have a bill which is in conformity with international business practices on anti-hijacking, which is deterrent in nature, and should the worst-case scenario of 9/11 kind of situation arise, where a passenger airliner is used as a fuel-air explosive or a missile, A, B, to use the same fuel-air explosive against, let's say, the Indian Parliament.
Okay, just very briefly, because we're running out of time, aren't you worried about the fact that if this bill comes through, the whole prospect of negotiation or the elbow room for negotiation gets completely wiped out?
No, that's not wiped out. The question is, the bill provides a law against which you have multiple options. The option of negotiation is still there, but I'm afraid negotiations of the kind we did in Kandahar in 1999 December, those are no negotiation, those are surrender. Okay. A national surrender. You carry cash for them. The then External Affairs Minister accompanies 3 dreaded terrorists who after that have indulged in mayhem across. Khalid Mohammed was actually responsible for 9/11. He was responsible for killing of Daniel Pearl. We have Masood Azhar, whose exploits are known to the entire nation. So I think negotiations in these situations perhaps are not as critical as the law to deter the hijacking in the first place.
Well, which is why I said at the top of the show that even 15 years down the road, Kandahar still remains, in the manner in which it was handled by, incidentally, an NDA government, it still remains a big black spot in our record. But thanks very much, Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark, retired, giving us his thoughts and perspective into this new bill which the NDA government is proposing to bring in the forthcoming winter session of Parliament. We're going to take a break here on the news tonight. When we return, bad news for Indian boxer Sarita Devi. She now faces a potential end to her boxing career as the International Boxing Federation says they're not accepting her apology. Those stories and more when the news tonight returns. Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Good news on the economic front. Retail inflation has now dropped to under 6% for the month of October. That's the lowest figures since January of 2012. This is the 4th consecutive month in which retail inflation has slipped. It had fallen to 6.46 in the month of September. Overall food inflation, and this of course concerns the ordinary consumer, has come down to 5.59% in October, as against 7.67 the previous month. Now, with these figures easing for the 4th consecutive month, the clamour for a rate cut by the Reserve Bank of India in its upcoming monetary policy meeting, which is early December, is only likely to intensify. Like I said, the RBI's next monetary policy meeting is on the 2nd of December. And that came on a day when, for the first time, the BSE Sensex touched the 28,000 mark and ended above it. The benchmark index was up just a shade under 100 points, 28,008, while the NSE Nifty was up by about 20 points. 83.83 was the closing figure for the Nifty. According to experts, auto and banking indices were the star performers today. They were up more than 1% each. The domestic sentiment remains upbeat on the back of continued good numbers on the inflation front, as well as industrial production numbers came out better than expected. Also upbeat on continued buying by foreign funds. All right, the question is, how much of this is driven by foreign institutional funds? Are retail investors still on the sidelines of this rally? And how sustainable is this rally? Govind Etiraj now joins us here on the news tonight. Govind, just bring our viewers up to speed with what is driving this rally, and really, is it a sustainable rally? Because I suspect, like many people in the markets do, that much of it is being driven by foreign money.
Yes, indeed, the markets are hitting a new record every day. It's been up almost, or rather more than 30% in 2014 alone. Now, there are several reasons for this. The first is, of course, the anticipation that the new government will bring back economic growth and recovery and really take things forward. The second is that there is nothing that has actually gone wrong. Normally, when there is high anticipation and something goes wrong, then there is disappointment. So nothing has fundamentally gone wrong. So the initial momentum of hope continues. But more importantly, today, there is a fundamental change on the external sector. Oil prices are now down below $85 a barrel and are likely to be there for a short while, if not perhaps a long while. On the other hand, commodity prices, including crop prices, are falling. All of this means that inflation is falling, and therefore the environment which we are in today is far more favorable to doing business, to growth, to expansion and so on. I think that's really what's keeping the markets going at this point of time. Whether it's sustainable, I don't know beyond a point, but the fact is that they will surely remain on a higher keel and with some expectation of growth, but perhaps may not be at the same level as before.
I want to focus a little bit about the sustainability of this rally. Obviously, all rallies is cyclical in that nature, but just curious as to how much of this is driven by FII money and how much of it is driven by retail investors, because the suspicion is a large majority of retail investors are still sitting out on the sidelines on this one.
Yes, you're right. The rally has been driven by FII money. The Indian retail investors not only continues to remain mostly on the sidelines, so that is changing because mutual fund investment or portfolios are going up now, but the Indian retail investor continues to focus more on gold and real estate. That's where most of savings have gone in the last few years, and that is not going to come back or come into equities in a hurry. Also, the other fact is that equities have to look attractive to investors, which means new issuances, interesting IPOs, maybe more government disinvestment. All of that will come, but it will take time, and therefore investors are unlikely to come in, at least in large numbers, as we are perhaps used to seeing in previous rallies. On the other hand, it is foreign investment that has been propping up markets, not just in this rally, but effectively for this century. There was a study that appeared recently which said that foreign investors have invested almost $160 billion since 2000 up to 2014. Domestic portfolio investors, which is mostly mutual funds and so on, have actually withdrawn $6 billion.
All right, so that's an interesting statistic to round off this chat. Thanks for joining us. Govind Etiraj is a senior business journalist with his thoughts and perspective as to what is driving these markets, virtually a historic high every day, if not every other day. Meanwhile, the government is all set to roll out measures to boost the manufacturing sector. This, of course, in keeping with the whole Make in India campaign. Giving out some specific details, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley today said these steps will be aimed at tackling labour as well as infrastructure bottlenecks. Addressing an event organised by the Commerce Ministry, Jaitley said the government would also focus on bringing down costs for products manufactured in India. Commerce Minister Nirmala Sitharaman was also present. She called for an aggressive approach to expand exports, particularly in the services sector.
The real job creation is in the manufacturing sector. And that's why one of our national challenges is that this 15% odd share of manufacturing today has to be increased to 25%. But that's an uphill task. And therefore that leaves us essentially with the services sector, whose growth is a low-hanging fruit in India.
All the other news and updates from across the country in Nationwide. Over 1 million PSU bank employees went on a day's strike Wednesday, affecting banking operations across the country. The strike was called under the banner of an umbrella organization of banks. It's called the United Forum of Bank Union. The employees demand a pay revision, which they say is due to them since November of 2012. At least 6 people were injured in a stampede at an army recruitment camp in Madhya Pradesh. The candidates clashed with the police, vandalized a railway station and set vehicles on fire. The candidates allege irregularities in the selection process. Nearly 15,000 had turned up for the recruitment drive at a local fairground. The Enforcement Directorate has claimed that the Rose Valley scam may be 6 times bigger than the Sharda case. The ED says Rose Valley had mopped up 15,000 crores from the public. The probing team has now frozen around 2,500 odd accounts in the firm. It's also looking at the role of senior RBI officials for failing to prevent bonsai schemes like Sharda and Rose Valley. Some international news now, and today the world took a big step forward to deal with one of the biggest challenges of our times, climate change. The United States and China, 2 of the biggest carbon emitters, agreed to mandatory cuts in greenhouse gases over the next decade and a half. The question, though, is, will this force other countries, including India, to follow their example?
When 2 giants come together, the world sits up and takes notice. China and the United States, the world's largest and the second largest polluters, have reached a landmark agreement on climate change. China will aim to cap greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. America will cut total emissions by a quarter by 2025. US President Barack Obama unveiled the deal in an unprecedented joint press conference with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
Today I can also announce that the United States has set a new goal of reducing our net greenhouse gas emissions by 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by the year 2025. This is an ambitious goal, but it is an achievable goal. It will double the pace at which we're reducing carbon pollution in the United States.
But the deal took 9 months in the making. Quietly behind closed doors and away from the TV cameras, both United States and Chinese officials have been burning the midnight oil. In the end, the deal clincher was a personal letter by Obama to his Chinese counterpart.
我们发表了关于应对气候变化联合声明，一起宣布了各自2020年后的行动目标，同意共同推动国际气候变化谈判于2015年巴黎大会如期达成协议，并深化两国清洁能源、环保等领域的务实合作。
A deal between China and the US is essentially for any future global framework to deal with global warming. The current Kyoto Protocol expires next year. The world's climate change negotiators will meet in Lima next month to thrash out a successor to Kyoto. Now that Beijing and Washington have resolved their differences, it'll be a tad bit easier to convince other countries to agree to mandatory cuts in emissions, India being one of them. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, so will we have a global framework to deal with climate change? We'll know in Lima next month, or possibly in Paris next year. Sports news now, and there's more trouble for boxer Sarita Devi, having already missed out on the World Championship because of a provisional suspension. Sarita now faces a harsh end to her career. For turning down the bronze medal at the Asian Games, the International Boxing Association is now threatening strict action, saying there can be zero tolerance against such behavior. Sarita's apology, though, seems to have made little difference to the world body. And although the IOA and Boxing India both have offered her full assistance, they do admit that Sarita's behavior was disrespectful.
I can see that AIBA is likely to take some action. I would only appeal to them that, considering the circumstances, please do not give her a severe punishment which finishes her career. Secondly, I would also say to all our sports managers, high and low, as well as all sports people in any game, that you have to learn discipline.
Oh, what a tame end to such a wonderful career. That's a wrap of the news tonight. It's not a tame end, we hope, of the show. From me, Zaka Jacob, and the rest of the team, thank you for your time. We'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time. Bye-bye.